Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Emily Schrader, and coming up in today's newscast, IDF launches military operation in Rafah aimed at eliminating final Hamas battalions. Hamas rejects hostage deal, then creates new terms in offer Israel rejects. Israel kicks off Eurovision Song Contest in Sweden with Eden Golan. The ground offensive in Rafah is underway. On day 214 of the war, IDF tanks rolled into Rafah and the Givati Brigade took over the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing to Egypt. The War Cabinet unanimously approved the move after rejecting the Hamas offer to accept a modified truce deal. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
IDF tanks are rolling into Rafah. The IDF confirmed that the 401st Armored Brigade captured the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing this morning. The crossing with Egypt is now disconnected from the Salah al-Din road in eastern Rafah, which was separately captured by the Givati Brigade in an overnight offensive. During the overnight operation, some 20 gunmen were killed and troops located 3 significant tunnel shafts. During the maneuver, a car drove toward an IDF tank and was struck and destroyed. No soldiers have been wounded in the operation so far. Meanwhile, more than 50 Hamas sites in Rafah were struck by the Air Force. The War Cabinet voted unanimously to order the troops to move on Rafah after carefully considering and rejecting the Hamas acceptance of a mediated offer that was not agreed to by Israel and did not meet Israeli requirements. Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about the hostage deal and the looming Rafah operation. Without elaborating, the White House said Biden reiterated his clear position on Rafah. The U.S. has repeatedly expressed its opposition to a major Israeli offensive if it does not ensure that the 1 million plus Palestinians sheltering there will be protected.
They're warning people to evacuate. I let them speak to their operations and to their intentions. Nothing's changed about where we are with respect to operations in Rafah that could put those people at greater risk.
Yesterday, the IDF began directing civilians to leave parts of Rafah, and a sizable number of civilians began to move as directed. Crowds of sheltered Gazans who have not moved could be seen celebrating in Rafah last night after the media announced that Hamas had accepted a ceasefire proposal from mediators. The Biden administration had been pushing alternatives to a Rafah invasion, including the bolstering of the Gaza border with Egypt and more targeted operations against Hamas's leadership. Israeli leaders have said that 4 operational Hamas battalions in Rafah must be dismantled in order to ensure that the terror group can no longer threaten Israel.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Hamas-Israel war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
As the IDF operation in Rafah is underway, the IDF has already taken control of the Rafah crossing following the rejection of Hamas's modified truce deal. Now joining us to discuss the future of the war and the Rafah operation is IDF General in Reserves, Yaakov Amidror. General Amidror, thank you for joining us today. Let me start by asking you, what are the IDF's objectives and what is their strategy for this Rafah operation?
The Rafah operation was initiated after a long time during which Israel negotiated with Hamas about the releasing of the hostages. And the decision was taken when it was totally clear that Hamas is not ready to compromise and insisting on the total end of the war at the end of the war, at the end of the process of the releasing of the hostages, and that it cannot be accepted by any member of the cabinet in Israel. So the decision was to go into Rafah in 2 different steps. One, to push from the east and then to go to the south part of Rafah, what we are calling Philadelphia Corridor. The name Philadelphia is not connected to any Philadelphia in the world. It's about the name in the code map of the IDF in the past. So that will isolate Rafah from Egypt and in a way gives the IDF the option to encircle Rafah before entering into it and the continuation of the operation. So it is a beginning, and the decision about the next steps will be taken after it will be totally clear what is going on with the new offer of Hamas, which had not been accepted by Israel. It cannot be accepted by Israel, but maybe it will bring a new negotiations, because now Hamas understand that Israel is very serious about dismantling the Hamas forces in Rafah.
Now, you mentioned the proposed or modified truce deal that Hamas sort of proposed last minute after the IDF had sent out warning notices, evacuation notices to civilians in eastern Rafah. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about those hostage negotiations and what exactly the problem is with what Hamas proposed.
I'm not familiar with all the details of the negotiations. Those who are negotiating are keeping all the details close to their chest, and I think it's very good that that is done that way. This negotiation should be as secret as possible. But what is very clear that there are two differences between what was offered by Qatar and Egypt in the past and was not accepted by Hamas, and the new offer of Hamas. One, it was clear that in the first stage, they have to release at least 33 hostages alive. And what they're offering is 33, including bodies. I mean, we don't know. Maybe 30 are bodies and 3 are alive. According to the language of the Hamas offer, it is not clear how many live people we will get. And we are not going to the first stage without knowing exactly that it is at least 33 at the beginning. We demanded it would be 40. Now they want it that it will be 33. And they want more days of ceasefire for those 33 that not all of them are alive. So that is ridiculous, cannot be accepted. And the second issue is, at the end of this process, it will be 1 stage, 2 stages, doesn't matter. Is it the end of the war, or after that, Israel will be allowed, according to the agreement, to continue the war? And from our point of view, we cannot stop the war.
Absolutely.
That cannot be the end of the war. We have to dismantle the Hamas forces in Rafah. If it is now, or 60 days from now, or 80 days from now, it's less important. What important is that it will be clear that Israel is not finishing the job before the job is finished. And this is the 3 elements that I understand are not going together with what was offered in the past.
Now, assuming that the IDF is successful and that they do eliminate Hamas successfully, does that mean the war is over? Or are we going to have another front when it comes to Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, many of the proxies of the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Leave alone the North, which is a problem for itself, and this is the main challenge for the future for Israel, should we initiate a war in Lebanon. Will be another stage in Gaza itself, where after dismantling of the Hamas infrastructure and forces, and after killing its commanders and destroying the underground tunnels and so on, Israel will face a long time in which Israel will have to clean Gaza. In 2002, in the West Bank, the operation itself was 1 month, and then to clean the West Bank from all the remnants of the Hamas and Islamic Jihad cells took us 4 years. Now I believe that it will be much shorter. The war itself, to dismantle the capabilities, will be around a year. It will be ended, I believe, within 3-4 months. And then we will have to have another 6 to 12 months that we have what Americans are calling mopping up, and in the meaning of it, not in technical terms, but it's to clean Gaza from all the remnants of Hamas. For example, we did it in the north, and after 2 months, we went back into Shifa hospital, and we killed more than 200 terrorists, and we captured around 500. This is something that we will have to do again and again in the next year in the Gaza Strip to clean it, that at the end, the position of the situation in Gaza Strip will be like Area A in the West Bank. And the treatment towards these places and the attitude towards the Gaza Strip will be like it is another big Area A.
General Amidor, we are out of time, but I want to thank you for your detailed insight on this issue. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
The Prime Minister's office says that the Hamas acceptance of a modified Egyptian-Qatari truce offer does not come close to meeting Israel's essential demands. Earlier, Hamas gave what was widely reported as a positive answer to Egyptian and Qatari mediators for a hostage truce agreement. More from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The Israeli War Cabinet received the Hamas response to the mediated truce proposal and said it was unacceptable to Israel. Israel did agree to send a working-level team to mediated talks in Cairo in order to exhaust the possibility of achieving an agreement on terms that are acceptable to Israel. The U.S. said it was still studying the Hamas offer.
As we have said for some time, there has been a significant offer on the table. The ball has been in Hamas's court. We have made clear that they should accept that offer, that Israel made significant compromises, showed that they wanted to reach an agreement that would lead to the release of hostages, that would bring an immediate ceasefire, and we have hoped that Hamas would take the deal that was on the table. Now, as to what's in their response, what it looks like, we're going to review that and withhold judgment until we've had a chance to conduct a full review.
Earlier, Hamas gave what was widely reported as a positive answer to Egyptian and Qatari mediators to a hostage-for-truce agreement. But the deal Hamas agreed to included significant changes to what Israel had earlier agreed to with mediators. The PMO said Israel will apply military pressure on Hamas to force progress on freeing the hostages and the other war aims. The IDF said that while Israel will take every opportunity to bring the hostages home, the military operations are ongoing.
אנחנו בוחנים כל תשובה וכל מענה באופן רציני ביותר וממצים כל אפשרות בנושא של המשא ומתן והשבת החטופים כמשימה מרכזית לביתם מהר ככל הניתן. ובמקביל אנחנו ממשיכים לפעול באופן מבצעי ברצועת עזה ונמשיך לעשות זאת.
In yet another loud protest, more than 1,000 anti-Israel protesters swarmed through the streets of New York City, attempting to disrupt one of America's hottest fashion events, the Met Gala. Police managed to keep the protesters away, but not without arresting more than 24 people. This, of course, comes at the same time anti-Israel demonstrators gathered outside Auschwitz at the annual March of the Living yesterday to protest against Israel. More from ILTV editor-in-chief Mayan Hoffman.
Dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters were arrested Monday night near the Met Gala after more than 1,000 swarmed the area, attempting to disrupt what is considered celebrity fashion's biggest night out. According to local media reports, the protesters vandalized several historic memorials in Central Park and the surrounding area while marching through the streets shouting, "Stop the genocide, end the apartheid, and free Palestine." In at least one instance, a protester was seen burning the American flag. The words Gaza and Free Gaza were sprayed at the base of the 107th Infantry Memorial and on the bronze statue of Civil War General William Sherman. The pro-Palestinian Within Our Lifetime activist group organized the activists as part of a Day of Rage demonstration. The event began at Hunter College, about 1.2 miles from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where the gala was held. In recent weeks, colleges across the United States have become hotspots for protests related to the Gaza war. These protests, particularly at Ivy League institutions, have escalated into violence, resulting in the arrest of thousands of individuals. In this case, police said 27 were arrested, but did not specify what charges were made. The NYPD put barricades near the Met Gala, widely anticipating that it would draw out demonstrations. Some Gaza war demonstrators were captured on video trying to push through those barricades. However, the police were successful, and the protesters never made it to the gala.
Well, for the first time, an Israeli journalist has been awarded the Pulitzer Prize for journalism. But among the other recipients is a Palestinian photographer who may have been involved in the October 7th massacre. Let's take a closer look at this issue.
Israeli writer Ronen Bergman has been awarded the prestigious Pulitzer Prize, marking the first time that an Israeli journalist has received the prize. Bergman was awarded as part of the New York Times coverage of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza, including investigations on Qatari funding Hamas, the massacre in Kibbutz Be'eri, and other coverage from inside Gaza. Previously, Bergman won the Sokolov Prize in 2017 and was part of the team at the New York Times, which won the George Pollock Journalism Award. But the New York Times' success with the latest Pulitzer is not without controversy. Among the recipients of the prize is Gaza photojournalist Youssef Massoud, who was with the Hamas terrorists on October 7th and likely took part in the attack itself, based on evidence shared. In a report by the NGO Honest Reporting, Massoud was also exposed for his social media posts praising Hitler and Palestinian terrorists as allies. In response to the criticism, the New York Times defended Massoud and praised his work. The collusion between mainstream media sources and Gaza terrorists has been an ongoing issue in the aftermath of October 7th. Reuters, Al Jazeera, and numerous other sources have faced justified scrutiny over their use of Gaza freelancers who participated in the massacre.
The presence of journalists at major events and in the field is not surprising, but certainly to see scenes of so-called journalists taking part in the October 7th massacre shocked the world. Here to speak with us about the alarming trend and the New York Times' new Pulitzer Prize is Simon Plosker, the editorial director of the media monitoring organization Honest Reporting. Simon, thanks so much for joining us. I want to begin by talking about this Pulitzer Prize. We saw the New York Times and Reuters win prizes, and both of them had worked with Gaza photojournalists who were involved in one way or another with the October 7th massacre. Were these particular photos actually rewarded?
Well, the good news, if there is any, is that they weren't rewarded in this case, because we had two things going on here. We actually suspected that the New York Times was going to submit their freelance journalists' photos, a guy called Youssef Massoud, for reward, and he didn't actually get there at all. However, Reuters did win the award for breaking news photojournalism. And in this particular case, one of the 15 photos that was submitted was by a guy called Yasser Kudi, who we know was over the border that morning on October 7th. In this particular case, none of his photos from the scene on that day were actually used. So it's a mixed bag here. We have the quite appalling example that's been set here that one of the journalists who did infiltrate Israel on October 7th is now the recipient of a Pulitzer Prize. I personally think that is incredibly wrong. On the other hand, and this perhaps is progress, if you can call it that, Reuters clearly didn't actually submit any of those photos from any of its photojournalists who had crossed the border that morning. So perhaps now we're seeing a recognition, hopefully, that there are ethical problems with using those photographs.
Now, does the fact that these photos and these particular agencies are being rewarded with a Pulitzer, does this legitimize some of their egregious reporting that we've seen from them over this war? For example, the reporting on the hospital bombing in Gaza that was initially reported as being from Israel, only to turn out a few hours later that it was in fact an Islamic Jihad rocket. Several incidents like this have taken place. Is this just rewarding the New York Times and some of these irresponsible sources?
Well, see, this is the odd thing here, because the New York Times has won a Pulitzer for its coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. However, it must be made clear that they won this on the back of 7 articles that they sent in, that they submitted to the Pulitzer Committee. And we looked at those articles. 5 of them were actually pretty good. They were professional pieces of journalism. 2 of them we had problems with. But overall, if you're a member of the general public and you see that the New York Times has won this award for its coverage, you're going to think that this was for the breadth of the reporting over a long period of time. And as we know, there are plenty of problems with the New York Times' coverage. And you mentioned just one of them, the Al Ahli Hospital, back in October of last year, where the New York Times was one of the first ones to actually rush to blame Israel for allegedly striking a hospital, and then afterwards admitting that, in fact, it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that had done the damage. And if you go and look, for example, at Honest Reporting's social media feeds or our website, you will see a litany of New York Times issues regarding their coverage. So, yes, I'm afraid to say the New York Times, whilst it should be recognized when it does its job and puts out decent journalism, there's far too many examples where it hasn't. And unfortunately, they are being rewarded for those as well.
Now, how have these news agencies reacted to the expose of Honest Reporting? Have they apologized? Have they taken any responsibility on working with these journalists in Gaza?
Well, we have seen that some of these photojournalists have lost their positions. They are no longer being used by media outlets. One of them, Hassan Aslaya, was pictured with Yahya Sinwar, and he is no longer being used by anyone, thankfully. Others have been quietly retired from service with media outlets. The main thing, though, is that we received an awful lot of pushback. Many media outlets really had a go at Honest Reporting for even raising these questions. And they tried to really twist things, because this really was a matter of ethics and the fact that these people had illegally crossed the border on the morning of October 7th. Now, we raised legitimate questions as to whether any of them happened to have advanced knowledge of what was about to happen, which I think was a very, very fair question to ask, given that they miraculously appeared on the scene that morning. But unfortunately, things got twisted afterwards, and instead we were accused of ourselves accusing the media outlets of having advanced knowledge, which quite honestly would have been an absolute bombshell, which we wouldn't have expected. And I think that by doing that, they really took the emphasis and distracted away from what the real issues here were.
Absolutely. Well, Simon, we are out of time, but thank you so much for all you're doing at Honest Reporting and for your insights today.
Thank you.
And something positive today. Israeli representative to the Eurovision Song Contest, Eden Golan, is preparing for the contest semifinals to make her country proud. Despite security threats and harassment, Eden has stood strong and will compete this week in Malmö. Let's take a closer look.
The stage is set in Malmö, Sweden, as the Eurovision Song Contest gears up for its highly anticipated semi-finals. Dress rehearsals kicked off today at the Malmö Arena, showcasing talents from across Europe. Despite the excitement, controversy looms with calls to ban Israel's contestant Eden Golan amid tensions over Israel's military operations in Gaza. Israel's entry Hurricane was subject to scrutiny, with the European Broadcasting Union rejecting earlier songs deemed too political. Golan will now perform in the second semi-final on Thursday. Meanwhile, Israel's Eden Golan aims to inspire unity through music. In an interview today, Golan expressed her hope to connect with audiences and leave a lasting impact with her song.
I'm coming here to show my voice, to share my love, my gift from God, and to hopefully make people feel something and leave a mark in their souls, and to unite by music.
In Malmö, police assure readiness amid potential protests linked to the ongoing global concerns. Authorities from neighbouring Denmark and Norway stand ready to assist if needed.
We're expecting some demonstrations, of course, and voicing of opinions. And the right to demonstrate is highly protected in the Swedish constitution. So it's been a part of our planning work since the beginning. So we feel prepared to handle any demonstrations that are going in Malmö, and to see our job is to make sure that those manifestations can be carried out in an orderly fashion.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 12 degrees Celsius or 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly clear skies are expected alongside a slight rise in temperatures, set to reach highs of 27 degrees Celsius or 81 degrees Fahrenheit. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channel, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our improved website, ILTV.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.